Honourable Prime Minister, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And on behalf of the Board of Governors of FinanceMalta, I welcome you to this 4th Annual Financial Services Seminar, bearing the theme, Gearing Up to Sustain Growth. It is indeed a great pleasure to have this opportunity to address you this morning, but I think it is even more pleasing, or equally pleasing, to witness this level of participation, as in itself, I think it is a confirmation of the increasing interest that is being exhibited by many operators and practitioners, both domestic and, I'm pleased to say today, international, in the growing traction of Malta's financial services industry. Special thanks go to Banco Valletta, the platinum sponsor of this year's seminar, as well as the other sponsors and the various exhibitors that we have outside the conference hall. So I'll be touching on 3 core themes. In the first part, I wish to give you an overview of the core developments that have characterized the financial services industry in Malta over 2010. Whilst in the second part, I'll quickly take you through the key highlights of FinanceMalta's promotion initiatives organized over 2010. And lastly, some forward-looking thoughts on the issues we need to keep at the center of our attention in order to ensure that we can sustain the growth that the industry has experienced so far. I think it's important, before we move to financial services industry's performance over 2010, to give this a degree of context. And I'm sure that you will all recollect that we had deemed 2008 and 2009 as literally annus horribilis. It was a very difficult year, where we nearly experienced a financial meltdown, and definitely I think everyone is glad that this is now behind us. Of course, everyone expected that 2010 would bring with it light at the end of the tunnel. But surely enough, you well know that it has brought fresh challenges in the marketplace. In 2008-09, we saw experienced governments bailing out financial corporations, financial institutions and banks in the main, while 2010, we have experienced governments bailing out governments. And we all know about the difficulties faced by the likes of Greece and Ireland, which between them necessitated 195 billion euros worth of funding, and very recently the inclusion of Portugal with 78 billion of funding. Of course, the emergence of increasing deficits and public debt, this led to various downgrades in the corporate bond sector in particular, where we experienced widening yields, and this, of course, led in turn to uncertainty in the marketplace. If we look at the Maltese economy within this broader context, we can say that we have had overall encouraging economic headline numbers. If we slice and dice a bit the performance of the various sectors within the financial services industry, we are seeing increasingly the presence of international banks. Suffice to mention that at the end of 2010, we had 25 credit institutions, 22 of which are foreign-owned. Interestingly enough is the broad ownership of these financial institutions, of these credit institutions, ranging from Australia down to Portugal, Switzerland, Turkey, and the UK. We had 3 new banks licensed in 2010. We had Deutsche Bank upgrading its license in order to provide custody services, which I think is a welcome development, particularly insofar as the funds industry is concerned. And despite the difficulties and the turmoil and the contraction in balance sheets abroad, we saw an increase in the bank's assets overall by no less than 21%, which equates to just under 50 billion euros. The domestic sector, which has remained very resilient, particularly when we remember the crisis in 2008-09, it equally strengthened its position in 2010, with deposits increasing to no less than 26 billion, reflecting an increase since 2004 of more than 120%. The banks, as you well know, are very well capitalized in Malta. Just a look at the balance sheets and even the EU-wide stress tests that were conducted very recently, and now there's a second round. Tier 1 capital ratios are double-digit, as against the single-digit regulatory requirement, and likewise is the total capital ratio, which stands on average at around 15%. So strong growth in this sector. The fastest growing sector in the economy is definitely the funds industry. A record growth in terms of the number of new fund licenses issued last year, just under 110 licenses, which brings the total to no less than 410 funds. An NAV of 8 billion, which reflects a 13.5% growth when compared on a year-on-year basis. And what's interesting enough is the development of a cluster. It's not just the funds being launched and registered in Malta, but more so we're seeing the establishment in Malta of peripheral financial services providers, such as fund management companies and fund administration. Interesting to note that during 2010, we have topped the 100 mark insofar as investment service operations bearing a Category 2 license. Growth in the funds industry is being driven by new fund setups, but we're also experiencing now redomiciliations from non-EU jurisdictions who are seeking an EU platform, and Malta, of course, is an attractive domicile. Maybe what's interesting in the funds industry is the fact that despite that it is not mandatory to appoint local service providers, insofar as fund admin is concerned, over 77% of all the funds that are authorized in Malta are serviced in Malta. And I think that is a very strong attestation of the quality of service that is being extended by local service providers. Insurance sector has continued with its growth traction, following very much on the heels of the very good growth we've experienced over the last 3 years. Suffice to mention that the number of insurance operators has increased since 2004, since membership, sixfold to 50 insurance operators. A diverse range of insurance operations from non-life, life insurance, composite, and reinsurance. Interesting to note the evident presence of the international and global insurance management organizations in Malta, which in turn are attracting the setting up of captives, some of which fall within the rankings of the Fortune 100 companies. As well, the setting up of the Insurance Management Association and the survey conducted in 2010 highlights that the assets managed by these companies have increased, have more than doubled since 2008 from over 500 million to over 1 billion. The trust sector has continued with relatively good growth, 10% growth in terms of licensed trustees, fiduciary service providers and administrators. And I think the presence of STEP in Malta, having a branch in Malta, has also led last March for a big STEP conference to be organized in Malta. And I think that is a clear attestation that there is growth potential in this particular sector. Clearly, we're seeing developments in the insurance side and the banking side, both general banking and specialized banking services, in the investment funds industry, and likewise in the setting up of international group holding companies. Our international attestations have equally improved over 2010. And if we look at these 4 core rankings, where here the World Economic Forum is ranking Malta alongside 138 other countries, we rank 11th in terms of financial market development, up from 13th, 10th up from 13th in terms of the banking sector, 12th in terms of regulation of exchanges, and 8th in terms of strength of auditing and reporting, which I think gives kudos to the industry. So what has been Finance Malta's role in this regard in supporting the visibility of Malta in the international fora? Well, we have organized quite a plethora of initiatives spread across various media channels, from conferences to print media, public relations, and even internet. And just to give you a flavor, last year we organized no less than 38 national and international initiatives. And we're also trying to spread our wings to emerging markets, like Asia, for example, and China, the Gulf, and even Africa. So we've organized these conferences, some of which we've appointed companies like the Financial Times, global conferences. We've worked with Camden Media in terms of family offices. And we even teamed up with local promotional agencies like Malta Enterprise, where, of course, there are clear synergies in promoting Malta jointly with this institution. Likewise, on the print media, we sponsored various publications relevant to the various sectors of the financial services industry. We also, through our members, and we have no less than 216 members now on the books of Finance Malta, interesting thought leadership articles, clearly to position Malta within the international fora insofar as the various sectors are concerned. Of course, internet, considering the physiognomy of Malta as an island, remains very, very important. And here again, we've organized various initiatives to include podcasts, where we've had interviews with the banking sector, the insurance sector, the fund sector, central bank, and even the stock exchange. We've organized webinars, a very recent one, very successful on the funds industry, where we had about 150 international organizations linking up to the live webinar, and of course the e-newsletter, which is sent out every quarter. I wish here to thank all the practitioners and operators who quarter on quarter contribute their articles to this publication. Going forward, during the course of this year, there is another sector that we will be placing on our table, and this is the wealth management sector. There is clearly a fast-growing number of Category 2 licensed companies being established in Malta, as well as coupled with the very recent government initiative to attract highly qualified persons, to include, of course, portfolio managers and investment analysts. We feel that now there is a cluster of wealth management service providers on the island. So definitely over the course of this year, wealth management will sit alongside the 4 other sectors, insurance, banking, trusts and funds, when we are promoting Malta outside our shores. Well, that brings me to the end of this introduction. I wish you an enjoyable conference. I hope it will be thoughtful, thought-providing, and why not, thought-provoking. And I wish you an excellent day. Thank you.